preacher to come on down and give us another lesson that we know we're waiting on and we can apply it in our everyday life.
Great job, my brother. Appreciate your leadership as always, brother. We'll let everybody get set and then we'll get going. You see, we're going to start another topic tonight. Don't look down on others. As we continue Luke chapter 18. So wherever the scriptures lead us, that's what we're going to talk about, right? It's going to keep going down the chapter. So everybody's getting set and we'll get going soon. How's everybody today? All right, you warm? At least in here? Not outside?
Yeah.
Good, good. So blessed to have some heat, right? And light and all those good things. By the grace of Almighty God. And as you know how the class works, your questions, your comments, suggestions are absolutely not only welcome but desired as we go through the scriptures. We're going to talk about the parable of the Pharisee and the Publican. One, if you've been in the church long enough, you've heard several times. But we're going to really apply it and try to break that down a little bit further than probably what we're used to. Because, again, we're in adult class, right? So in adult class, you can't stay on ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, right? It'll take a little bit farther so we continue to grow and develop into the Christ-like people that God destined us to be. I think it's about time we go ahead and get going. So again, we're going to start. I think it's going to probably at least be two parts of this. That we don't look down on others. Is what Jesus is teaching us in this parable we're going to study. All right. Anybody remember what a parable is? What's a parable? That's the cliche way of saying it, right? The earthly story with a heavenly meaning, right? That's the way I learned it too as well. About 20 years ago when I first was in school at Midwestern Christian Institute back in Mount Clemens, Michigan. That's what they taught us as well. And so obviously then it's a fictional story that's going to teach us a spiritual thing, a spiritual application, right? In order to make us better people as we go along. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead. And we always start with the scriptures because we definitely want God speaking and not me or anybody else speaking. Especially in guidance of our thoughts and what conclusions we come to. Let's get some volunteers. Luke 18, verse 9 to 14 is what we're going to be discussing, at least this week and probably next week as well. Somebody start reading that. Luke 18, verse 9 to 14, how the King James Version is on the screen or whatever you may have.
And he spake this parable unto certain which trusted in themselves that they were righteous and despised others.
Okay, who's speaking? This came from who? Jesus, correct, right? All right, and we'll make sure we establish our pronouns, right? All right, keep going, please.
2 men went up into the temple to pray, the one a Pharisee and the other a publican.
All right, so that's your two characters, right? The Pharisee and the publican, right? Okay, keep going. We'll describe it a little bit further, but I'm sure you're familiar with them.
The Pharisee stood and prayed thus with himself, God, I thank thee that I am not as other men are, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even as this publican.
All right, let's stop there. Do you even see a problem with him the way he prayed?
Mm-hmm.
What did he forget to start with? And we don't even know the lesson yet. Something that stood out. What did he forget to start his prayer with? Exactly. Who's on his mind? Himself, right? So it has nothing to do with God. Nothing, right? He's basically grandstanding for himself. To give himself props, give himself credit for being so righteous in his own eyes, right? And so obviously you can never be humble when the first thought in your mind is what? You. Right? Okay, keep going. Keep going. We're going to break it down as we keep going.
I fast twice in the week. I give tithes of all that I possess.
All right, let's stop there. You notice something else about him. What else is about his character? do you notice? He's selfish, right? Okay.
He's trying to justify himself.
He's trying to justify himself. Okay. What did you say?
I feel like he's trying to look on how much he's making sure what he give. Like he can, I give that times of all my possessions, which was supposed to him anyway, but like he righteous.
I give tithes of what? All that I possess. Now I guarantee he probably not. He just grandstand. Yes, sir.
He want to show the Lord how righteous he is. And this man, we talked about this in our Wednesday morning class about living humble. That's what this lesson was. And because this man shows absolutely no humility at all.
Right.
You know, and but you know, another thing, he's telling the Lord what he does, as if the Lord doesn't know what he does.
Exactly.
You know, forget it, there's a book of deeds, you know, we kept.
Right.
So, the Lord knows more about what he does than he knows himself. The Lord knows about the things that he has done, but he perhaps has forgotten already. And because this man is talking as if he can deceive God.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like he can outsmart him, right? By any form of fashion. Like God already knows what we're gonna do before we do it, right?
Right.
Like David said, there's not a word in my tongue, but thou knowest it, right? You know, back in the Psalm. So God knows everything about us, about him, so forth and so on. So it's almost like he's building a case for himself. Like, Lord, look at me. Look at who I am. Here's the evidence of how righteous I am. Does God really need to know that? Because God knows us inside and out anyway, as he said, right? That's a good observation. I cut you off?
No.
Okay. All right. So we just kind of warm it up. All right. All right, somebody keep reading. We've got 2 more verses, 13 and 14, as we introduce this parable and then discuss it a little further.
And the publican standing afar off would not lift up so much as his eyes into heaven, but smote upon his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner.
Do you see any contrast there?
Yeah.
You know, what is the attitude of the publican right now?
Real humble.
Humble. How do you know he's humble?
This man realized he's a sinner. He's admitted
Right.
his wrongdoing.
So you hear it from his mouth.
He says that he's a sinner.
Right. What else gives you an indication that he's humble?
The way he
Had his head down.
posture that, the way
Yes.
he's not even looking up.
Exactly. Exactly what I was going at. So basically, his body and his mouth is saying the same thing. Right? You know, somebody can say, oh, I love you, I care about you, not looking your direction. You think they really mean what they're saying, right? Or they're laughing while they're saying things. So obviously then, the fruits of what he's saying, it all aligns, right? His body, you know, his posture, what he's saying, all of these type of things just exudes or spills out nothing but humility. He couldn't even lift up his head, right? To even look at God, you know, if you could say it that way, you know, talking to symbols here, that he is such a great person by any form of fashion. But is either the Pharisee and the Publican great people in the grand scheme of things? No, it can't be, right? Because we all are supposed to be in the same position as this publican, right? That God has to have mercy upon us because we all have sinned, right? And we're going to talk a little bit further with that. And so that also does not give us ground to keep looking down on other people. Have you ever, you know, in your personal experience, don't call no names or places you've been, but have you ever run into somebody like that, maybe even in the church? I have. You know, a lot of people, especially as a preacher, they want you to justify them. They want you to say, oh, you are righteous. Oh, you are the greatest thing since sliced bread. People come to you like that. And they'll come to you in the same capacity. Like, at least I'm not like brother, what's the name over there? Or I'm not like sister, this person, right? That kind of stuff. Or and God did this to me before. This wasn't at Henry Street. This is a different congregation. You know, because we're trying to encourage him, be on time for worship service. But his thing is, at least I'm not like the other people. At least I'm here. That don't count. Because when it comes to you and God, you got to stand there, what? By yourself. He's not going to say, okay, you better. You know, people, you know, kind of like the concept that we have in the school system sometimes. God is not grading you on a curve. In other words, some people are going to fail and some people are going to pass based on comparing each other. Don't work like that, right? Again, every man is going to stand in front of God by his what? Own deeds without comparison to anybody else, huh? You know, sometimes you look forward to it back when you were a kid, right? If you halfway study and the teacher said your quiz is going to be on the curve, I can at least fall in the middle. You know, you might think that way, but it don't work like that, do it, right? Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments? Now, again, we're just kind of warming up and getting going as we go along. Yes, sir.
Well, like she's saying, you know, people compare themselves to other people who are, but you know, we have to realize other people are not just standing.
Right.
And if you compare yourself to somebody that's already, just like in taking a test, if you make 40 and the other person make 39, you may do better than they did, but still made an F.
Right, exactly. You still failed. Exactly. Exactly. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. All right. I don't think we read 14. Somebody read 14. We still actually kind of warming up. We haven't read 14. Luke 18:14.
I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone that exalteth himself shall be abased, and he that humbleth himself shall be exalted.
All right. So what does the word justified mean in our context here? What does justified mean?
Make it right.
Went down to his house justified, not made himself. To make yourself justified means what? Be self-justified. Okay? This one means to truly be righteous. Okay? So it says, I tell you, this man went down to his house justified. Which man is he talking about now? The publican. The publican. Okay? So he said, that was the man that was able to leave the temple in good standing with God, is what he's saying. Okay? That God said, this is the righteous one. Okay? Notice he didn't say anything about the man that was saying, oh Lord, look at me, I am the righteous one. No, he said, the one that was righteous one said what? Have mercy upon me, a sinner. The one that was totally honest, that was totally transparent, right? And was real with God. And not being phony with him. Okay? He wasn't the hypocrite, the other guy was, okay, which was the Pharisee. He was the hypocrite, right? All right. He says why? Because what is God trying to teach you? He says, for everyone that exalted himself, what does exalt mean?
Put yourself high.
Yeah, put yourself on a pedestal. Those that get spiritually arrogant, spiritually conceited, God is saying what? That one's going to be a base. What does a base mean? God is going to humble him. Right? He's going to make him come to a humble status, right? Of course, we know on the judgment day, that's going to be very apparent, right? Okay? All right? And when everyone that exalts himself shall be abased, and he that what? Humble himself shall be what? Exalted. Like the old hymn goes, humble thyself in the sight of the Lord, and what he's going to do? He will lift you up. I believe that song probably was based off of this scripture or one similar to that. So again, there's no way in the world that we can please God if we're self-righteous, right? And we also cannot make ourselves look better to God by stepping on other people's reputation. Okay? God doesn't accept either of those scenarios to justify you or say you are righteous in his mind, right? Okay? Self-justification don't mean nothing, does it, right? Because again, at the judgment day, who's the judge? Jesus himself, right? So it doesn't matter how self-justified we are. If Jesus don't say it, then it don't count, right? And it won't get us into heaven, okay? So you're just wasting your breath, you're wasting your arrogant mind, concentrating on this so-called positive energy on yourself when it's not true to begin with, okay? All right, any other questions or comments before we really get into it? All right, let's move on then. All right, so we read it now. So if you notice Luke 18, verse number 9, there were two things Jesus exposed to us as to what he's trying to teach us from that parable. Okay? So remember, as we always talk about in our classes, we let the Bible interpret the Bible, right? In most parables, you're going to find that out, that Jesus is going to give you the reason why he said it in the first place. So what are those two reasons, once again, that are on your screen? Or whatever you picked up from this scripture, it's in Luke chapter 18, verse 9. Why did he say this at all? What was he trying to do? What spiritual thing is he trying to teach? Or things, it's two. What was that? Don't become self-righteous. Which we can also call what? Spiritual arrogance, spiritual conceit, getting a spiritual big head, whatever words you want to say. God is saying, I'm trying to teach you this so you don't become that Pharisee. Okay? And what's the other thing he's trying to do? Don't look down on anybody else. Okay? Remember, we're all God's children, right? And God is dealing with us individually where we are at. Thank God he's doing that, right? Because that gives us chances, right? It gives us his grace and mercy constantly renewed to us each day as he's allowing us to grow up in Christ, okay? So obviously we all got to start somewhere, don't we? That's why one reason why when somebody first becomes a Christian, after they give their confession that Jesus is the Son of God, after they come out of the water grave of baptism, don't have such high expectations of them. Because why? Why would you have that high expectation of them? They just started. Correct. They're babies. You can't expect a baby to know what a 50-year-old knows, do you? In life, do you? So you can't expect that new person to know everything you know if you've been in the church 20, 30 years. You got to have patience. If you're going to say, at least they get to where I'm at, we'll give them 20 years. I'm exaggerating, I'm being sarcastic. If God put up with you for 20 years, you're going to have to put up with them and the stuff that they're doing, right? And as God has put up with your stuff all of that time. So, if you think like that, that keeps you humble, doesn't it? Keeps you in the right frame of mind, keeps you from becoming a Pharisee. Because really, at the end of the day, every breath we take, we're still the publican. Because you sin daily. Even after you become a Christian, the blood of Christ got to scrub you and me daily for us to be right in God's eyes. It really does. It really does. All right, so any questions or comments now? Remember, this is setting the tone of why Jesus gave us this parable in Luke chapter 18. Yes, sir.
Apostle Paul talks about that in like Romans 12:3. He tells us not to think more highly of ourselves than we ought to. So, no matter how little you think another person may be, you're still not any better than they are. So right. Nobody here in a room really to just look down on people. If they're down that low, it's our responsibility to get down with them. If you're going to be servant, like he is servant. Right. If you're going to get down to where they are. Exactly. Like Jesus gave up heaven and come gave up the glory of heaven and come to earth to be given to sent to me. That's right. And that's what we ought to be observing. Rather than looking at somebody that we think is worse than we ought to be looking at Jesus as the example. Exactly. He's the one we need to be trying to pattern our lives after.
If you think about that, how can we ever get along if everybody thinks they're better than the next person? You wouldn't fellowship with each other, right? Because you would feel that they're not worthy to fellowship with you, right? And so if everybody's doing that, I guarantee you can find somebody in the church you can point at just like that Pharisee did to the public. And they can do to somebody who do the same thing to you. You see, if we want to be really real about this, there's a lot of people in the church and outside in Gadsden, out in the community that know where we came from. That know who we used to be. And so how are you really going to draw others to Christ? By looking down upon them in the world or in the church. It's just food for thought. Food for thought. Okay? At the end of the day, we all saved by grace, right? And not by works. The undeserved mercy and favor of God is upon all of us at the end of the day. All right, let me move down a little bit more real quick, and I'll open back up to you. All right. So, obviously then, Jesus was trying to keep them, the Pharisees, us, the audience he's talking to, from becoming overconfident about our own righteousness. Okay? That's easy to do if you don't watch out for it. So that's one reason why when you're looking at Galatians, is it verse 6, verse 1, if I got it correctly, right? For a brother be caught in the fault, ye which are spiritual, what? Restore him in the sense of, I'm paraphrasing, of meekness, right? Be gentle with them, considering thyself, lest thy what? Also be tempted. So in other words, one of the ways that we become spiritually arrogant is not watching ourselves and watching everybody else. Because if you're ever always watching everybody else, you forget where you are. You forget to look in your own spiritual mirror and see what's really looking back at you and me. Because if I can take a poll in here, how many of you perfect? It should be one hand that go up, right? Including mine, right? He is the only one that God, Jesus is, that God testified as being perfect and without sin. So again, don't ever be overconfident about your righteousness. We can call that spiritual arrogance, just like you be arrogant in other things. Yes, ma'am.
Brother Norwood, goes on in the church, because some people, they look at what another person might do and say, well, if they do it, I can do it.
Yeah.
And then they don't, but it's not going to make it right,
Right.
or whatever else and stuff. And they look at it like that person can't say nothing to them because they do stuff. And you ain't got no right to say nothing to me about what you do.
Yeah, we'll easily put that wall up. If you're not right, how you gonna correct me? Easily. Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
I was just gonna read one of my favorite scriptures pertaining to this lesson, which is Matthew 7:4. Or how wilt thou say to thy brother, let me pull out the mote out of thy eye, and behold, a beam is in thy own eye. If you're gonna pay attention to somebody else, at least make sure if they are doing wrong, assist them to help them to do the best once you've made yourself better.
Right, and you said a key. Once you have made yourself better. Because again, that chapter, Matthew chapter number 7, verse number 4, he actually takes it even deeper than this parable. Basically saying with the mote and the beam, what was one of the translations? I think it's an NIV that uses beam and speck of dust, basically, in your eyes, right? The one that has the beam, the big 2x4 in the eye, is looking at the one that got a speck of dust that's upon them. So what that is basically saying is, most of the time that you have people that are always self-righteous and trying to step on others to make themselves look right is worse than the person they're judging. Okay? In some cases, just using Jesus' analogy there, some of us may be looking at a speck of dirt in somebody else's eyes, and we're a whole lumber yard. You know what I mean? It could be 10 times worse than what we're judging, by far. Let me move real quick. Just trying to get somewhere. All right. So again, God has already indicted us. God has already talked about our righteousness without the blood of Christ cleansing us. Okay, so again, we talk about it every week. Romans 3:23, right? For all what?
Sin.
All have sinned. Is your name in there? Yes. My name is in there because we're all part of the all, right? But all have sinned and did what? Come short of the glory of God. So again, what does glory of God mean when you do your word study? What is glory of God? If something is glorified, what is it?
The greatness of something.
It's a good way of saying it. Exactly. Kind of like, when Usain Bolt, set the record in track in 2008, right? He was glorified. He was praised, right? He was put on a pedestal above everybody else, like the three, the first place, second place, third place. He was put on the what? The first place, right? That means he was above all at that time, right? Superior in that track event. Well, God, this is like saying God is glorified because he's on a pedestal above everybody, right? His holiness is unmatched. His integrity is unmatched. His honesty is unmatched. And so we always sum that up in saying he is nothing but perfection. Okay? So the glory of God means his absolute perfection. And so if that is the case, then for all have sinned, because remember, we're talking about sin as opposed to glory. So we must be talking about the integrity of God, right? Because it's doing opposites here. All right? For all have sinned and what? Come short of the glory of God. So if you're saying in your own words, your own vernacular, what does it mean to come short of the glory of God then? Using your word study. What does it mean?
Would you have met the standard of perfection?
Yeah. You have not achieved perfection. We all have what? Come short. Meaning we have never achieved the absolute glory of God. And so by extension, we haven't achieved the glory of God. We cannot be God. We're nowhere close to being God because what? It says we have all come short. Okay? Come short. Okay? And we have never match up to that in this life. Yes, sir.
I think it's a prophet leader that Isaiah that says, you know, all the goodness is no more than filthy rags.
That is true.
So, you know, you can tell that lets you know how far you are below God.
Yep. And the Bible says that the righteous scarcely be saved. Meaning barely be saved. The best of us, at the end of the day, in God's opinion, is that we're barely saved. Only because his son died for us. Okay? That's the only way we make it through the pearly gates of heaven, symbolically speaking. All right. So again, I know we're taking it slow, but we're doing it on purpose. Because every word makes a difference. Every last word makes a difference. Okay? All right. And so Brother Mitchell started going here. Let's get 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse number 12. It's never wise to compare ourselves against ourselves. Okay? Well, how does God feel about that when we compare ourselves against ourselves? This scripture brings it out even more what was going on in that parable of the Pharisee and the Publican. Somebody read that for me, please. 2 Corinthians 10, verse 12. That's New King James Version, by the way, on the screen it is.
For his letters say they, we wait and powerful, but his bodily presence is weak, and his speech contemptible.
Is that 1 Corinthians or I
That's what it
yeah.
is. 1 Corinthians.
2 Corinthians 10, 12.
2 Corinthians 10.
I may have put that in the wrong reference. Let's see. Let me get it. That could be me. That could be
You said 10, 12?
That sounds like the right one.
That's right.
For we dare not make ourselves
Yes,
a
right.
or compare ourselves with some that
Second.
commend themselves.
Yeah, you got it right. For we dare not class ourselves. It's New King James Version what it says. I think you got it right.
Okay.
2 Corinthians 10, 12.
For we dare not make ourselves a number or compare ourselves with some that commend themselves, but they measuring themselves by themselves and comparing themselves among themselves are not wise.
All right. So again, the New King James says, for we dare not class ourselves or compare ourselves with those who commend themselves. In other words, we don't want to be just like that Pharisee, right? That we're talking about. God is saying, don't be that type of person. Basically, is what the first part of that verse is saying, right? What's the point of that? It says, but they what? Measuring themselves what? By themselves, and comparing themselves among themselves are what? Are not wise. So God is saying that's not wise at all. And I think you started getting into that as we go along, as we have been talking. It is. Why is it not wise to compare ourselves against ourselves? Y'all gave me some answers, but give me some more. Give me some more on that line of thinking. Why is it not smart for me and Brother Mitchell to compare ourselves? First, yeah, we ain't Jesus, so we can't really judge each other. He can tell me anything. He can put airs upon. He can be the worst man in the world when you get out of the church building. You know, or vice versa, right? Go ahead, brother.
You know, another thing, people's ability varies from person to person. You know, some people are not able to do it, and the Lord doesn't necessarily expect us to do something that we're not capable of doing.
Right.
You know, if another person is able to do something you can't do, then doing your best, doing our best is what we got to be more concerned with, right? And not, but on the other hand, the person, no matter how good they are, they still don't far exceed in God's sight. You know, so they're not, still not the standards. You know, it's always, well, Jesus is the standard, really, what we should be doing.
Well,
Not me.
in the case with me, you don't want to become me because the problem is you duplicate my weaknesses. Every man has a weakness. Every woman has a weakness. And you may not be struggling with what I'm struggling, but you definitely won't take on my struggles plus yours. You make your life harder when you think about that, right? And so obviously you gotta have a perfect standard, right? You know, have you ever tried to hang a picture on the wall? You know, you can do it visually, but when you had a leveler, the tool, you got something that can make it what? Truly straight, right? And so you go by my eyes, it might be a little crooked when you get done. You get where I'm coming from? You need what? A perfect standard. Perfect standard. And that's basically what Jesus is. Okay? And then, you know, he said on the flip side too, we all have different gifts in the church. And so don't try to duplicate my gift. I can't duplicate your gift. You are made for God's good pleasure. Remember we talked about that. Revelation 4 verse 11. We talk about quite often, right? That we're made for God's pleasure and to serve him. So he gave you your specific gifts. He gave you your specific things that you can use to glorify him that I may not or may be able to do. But does God hold me responsible for that? No. No, right? Because he didn't make me to be you. He made me to be me. He made you to be you and be the best you can be in glorifying God. Okay, that makes sense to you? I know it sounds like a riddle or a tongue twister, but I think you get the point of what our elder was actually trying to say, and which was ministering to my spirit as well. So again, you can't compare the sinful by the sinful. Because if you got sinful plus sinful, what are you going to get? Sinful. You can't get sinful plus sinful and then get righteous out of it. It don't work that way. Okay? You have to what? Compare sinful to righteousness and try to what? Build to that righteousness who is Jesus himself. Okay? That's the only standard. That's the only level we got. As we use in our construction analogy. Yes, sir.
Another thing I was thinking about is that, you know, Paul also compared the church to the body, the human body.
Yeah.
You got many members, but all one body.
Yeah.
You know, in the human body, there's some you can't compare. Well, it's like comparing your nose to your eyes. Ain't no comparison there, you know.
Right.
So it's all different in different functions, and also you have this may not be all together true in this case, but you know it's similar. You don't expect certain things to do the same thing because you don't expect certain people to do the very same thing, but yet they do what they're supposed to do in some cases.
Absolutely. All right. Any other questions or comments? Feel free. Yes, sir.
I don't want to prolong the same point. I think it's also interesting that you point out the fact that you're talking about a person that's committing themselves in a way in their own life.
Well, and typically they got some issues. You know, they typically have some low self-esteem, and so they have to build it off of somebody else. You know, they knock other people because they probably feel like they've been knocked their whole life. So now I got to find a way to make myself feel better. But you know, the only thing that you can do in that situation is you should feel good anyway that Jesus died for you. That means you have value. You have purpose. And so obviously, you should have self-esteem because of that. That makes sense to you? Without having to get dirty or think evil about other people. Because if you weren't worth something, Christ would have never died for you in the first place. And God would have never gave him to you in the first place as the offering for our sins. Guys, I think I am going to stop here. And we'll continue on if you want to. Look ahead. You know, again, we're going to break down Hebrews 4:14 and 16 a little bit more. Romans 8:29, we're talking about Jesus being the standard. You're familiar with Hebrews 4, verse 14 and 16, so I'm going to challenge you again on it and see if you can break down the words and come to the conclusion that the scriptures is actually teaching. So again, we're going to talk about the standard being Jesus, again, Hebrews 4:14 and 16. Romans 8 verse 29 as we continue this topic. We're going to still talking about, you know, being humble about how we still sin as Christians. 1 John 1:8 verse number 9. And I think that's enough for you. Instead of giving you all the spoilers, as we say, right? For on the next occasion. But you can study ahead of me and again, study each word because it does make a difference. as you go through it. You can't stay on a surface level and be a strong adult Christian in your knowledge. Okay? All right, so any other questions or comments? Again, be like ancient Marines also, as I conclude. Be the Acts chapter 17 Christian, right? You're supposed to what? Study to see if these things are so. Study behind and see if these things are so. Any other closing questions or comments before we conclude? All right. If not, then we'll ask the brother to lead us in a song, and we'll reconvene as a group with the kids in a moment. Again, good class. God bless you. May He keep you.
We'll sing a little bit of number 96 and something more. Zion's call sweetly ring over land and sea, bidding us look to realms above, while the light from the throne shines for you and me. Let us listen to the call of love. Zion's call is ringing, coming from the throne above. While we hear it ringing, let us heed the call of love. While we tarry below, there is work to do, and our strength coming from above. As we labor and wait, we must all be true. Let